I only found the hotel bookings because Nadia forgot to clear her browser history. 3 reservations, all on weekdays she claimed were working late. All billed to her boss's corporate card. If only she'd been as careful with her secrets as she was with her makeup. The laptop sat open on our kitchen table, humming softly in the October darkness. Our daughter Daisy had complained about it running slow, and being the good father, the sucker, I'd volunteered to clean it up. Delete some files, run a scan, maybe install that antivirus software she kept ignoring. I should have minded my own business. The browser opened to 17 tabs, because apparently 16-year-olds never learned to close anything. Instagram, TikTok, some homework portal she probably hadn't touched in weeks. But there, nestled between a makeup tutorial and college prep spam, was a tab that made my coffee taste like ash. Confirmation, reservation, de 4471829, Hampton Inn, downtown. My wife's name, Victor Ashford's corporate credit card. October 8th, last Tuesday when she'd texted me about staying late for the Henderson project presentation. I clicked through the history with the methodical patience I'd learned wiring houses for 20 years. Every connection had to be perfect, every detail checked twice. One loose wire could burn down everything you'd built. The pattern emerged like a blueprint. September 15th. Client dinner with the Morrison Group. Browser history, Hampton Inn, room 237. September 28th. Working late on the Riverside development. Browser history, Holiday Inn Express, King Suite. October 8th. Henderson presentation prep. Browser history, Hampton Inn again, different room. 17 screenshots. I saved everyone. My hands didn't shake. They never did when I was working. Steady hands were what made me good at my job, what built Tate Electrical from a one-man operation into something that employed 12 people. Steady hands that had held Nadia when Daisy was born, that had signed mortgage papers and anniversary cards and insurance forms. Steady hands that now printed evidence of my wife's affair. The confirmation emails were even better. Room service charges, late checkout fees, parking validations, all the little details that painted a picture clearer than any photograph. Victor Ashford's American Express, corporate account, authorized user, Nadia Tate. How considerate of him to pay for my humiliation. I cross-referenced her calendar, the one she kept on the kitchen counter, marked with careful handwriting about client meetings and site visits. Every hotel date matched perfectly with a work commitment that kept her out past dinner. The Henderson presentation she'd supposedly prepped for? That project had been approved 3 weeks ago. I knew because she'd celebrated with champagne. The Morrison client dinner? I'd called the restaurant to make sure she got there safely. They'd never heard of any reservation. 23 years of marriage, and she'd gotten sloppy with her lies. I sat in our kitchen, my kitchen, since I'd rewired every outlet and installed every light fixture, and planned my response. The refrigerator hummed. The dishwasher clicked through its cycle. All the sounds of a normal Wednesday night in a normal house where normal people lived normal lives. Nothing about this felt normal anymore. 2 envelopes. That's all it would take. The first went to Eleanor Ashford, Victor's wife of 15 years. I'd met her at company parties, watched her smile politely while Victor held court about architectural innovations and sustainable design. She collected art, volunteered at the literacy center, and probably had no idea her husband was charging hotel rooms for his affairs. No return address, just the screenshots printed on clean white paper with a simple note. Thought you should know. Check the dates against his calendar. The second envelope went to Hartwell & Associates Human Resources Department. Same screenshots, but this time attached to a formal complaint about misuse of corporate funds. Policy Violation Section 12, Subsection 4. Unauthorized personal expenses charged to company accounts constitute grounds for immediate termination. I'd read their employee handbook cover to cover when Nadia got promoted to senior architect. Amazing how useful that information became. The post office opened at 8. By 8:15, both envelopes were in the system, racing toward their destinations like electrical current through copper wire. Fast, efficient, irreversible. I drove to work, whistling. Tate Electrical occupied a converted warehouse on the south side of town, where the rent was cheap and the neighbors minded their own business. My crew was already loading trucks when I arrived, Jimmy checking inventory, Carlos reviewing work orders, Big Mike arguing with someone on the phone about wire gauge requirements. "Morning, boss," Jimmy called out. "We still on for the Riverside job today?" Riverside. The development Nadia had supposedly worked late on last month, the one where she'd been consulting with the client while actually consulting with Victor in a hotel room 12 miles away. "Change of plans," I said. "Carlos, take the Riverside job. Jimmy, you're with me. We're doing service calls today." Big Mike hung up his phone and wandered over. "Everything all right? You look like someone who found a 20 and lost a 50. "Just thinking about efficiency," I said. "How to eliminate waste in the system." He shrugged and went back to loading cable spools. Mike had worked for me for 8 years, long enough to know I got philosophical when I was processing something. He also knew I'd explain when I was ready. The day passed in a blur of routine service calls, faulty outlets, flickering lights, circuit breakers that needed replacement, simple problems with simple solutions, not like marriage, where you could follow every rule and still watch everything short out. I kept checking my phone, waiting for the inevitable call from Nadia. It came at 3:17. "Desmond?" Her voice sounded tight, controlled. "Can you talk?" "I'm working. What's up?" A pause. Background noise. Office sounds. Keyboards clicking. Someone laughing. "There's been some kind of mix-up at work. HR wants to meet with me tomorrow morning." "What kind of mix-up?" Another pause. Longer this time. "Something about expense reports. Victor's involved too. It's probably just a routine audit, but what?" "But I might need to come home early today. Cancel my evening meeting." The evening meeting. I wondered which hotel she'd been planning to visit, which corporate credit card would have paid for it. "Sure," I said. "I'll pick up dinner. Chinese okay?" "Perfect. I love you." The words hit like a live wire, sharp, unexpected, painful. "Love you too," I lied, and hung up. By 5:30, I was home with takeout containers and a bottle of wine. Nadia's car was already in the driveway, which meant she'd left work early, probably spending the afternoon trying to figure out how much trouble she was in. She met me at the door with a smile that looked like it had been practiced in a mirror. "How was your day?" "Productive," I said. "Fixed a lot of problems." We ate dinner like actors playing married couple, making small talk about Daisy's college applications and the weather forecast. Nadia picked at her lo mein, checking her phone every few minutes. Waiting for updates from Victor, probably. Wondering how their carefully constructed lie was falling apart. "The HR meeting," I said, refilling her wine glass. "What do you think it's about?" She shrugged, but her shoulders stayed tense. "Victor thinks someone might have reported irregularities in his expense account. You know how corporate gets about receipts and documentation." "Irregularities like what?" "Oh, just mixing up personal and business charges. It happens sometimes when you're traveling a lot for work." I nodded sympathetically. "Hotel rooms can be confusing that way." Her fork stopped moving. For just a second, her mask slipped, and I saw something that might have been panic. "Exactly," she said. "Hotel rooms." We finished dinner in silence. She helped with dishes, kissed my cheek, and went upstairs to prepare for tomorrow's meeting. I sat in my kitchen, listening to water run through pipes I'd installed, watching lights I'd wired illuminate the house I'd helped build. Everything looked the same. Everything had changed. My phone buzzed with a text from my brother Joey. "Poker game Friday. You in?" I typed back. "Can't make it. Busy week." "Everything okay?" I stared at the question for a long moment before responding. just cleaning house. The call came at 9:47 Thursday morning while I was installing a new panel box at the Morrison office complex. Ironic, considering Morrison was one of Nadia's fictional client dinners. "Mr. Tate?" The voice was crisp, professional, unfamiliar. "This is Patricia Hendricks from Hartwell and Associates. I'm calling regarding your wife." I set down my wire strippers and stepped away from my crew. "What about her?" "I'm afraid there's been a situation. Mrs. Tate has been suspended pending investigation of expense account irregularities. She's been asked to leave the premises immediately." The satisfaction hit me like a perfect electrical connection, clean, complete, exactly as planned. "I see," I said. "What kind of irregularities?" "I can't discuss details, but she'll need to return her company laptop, access cards, and any project files by end of business today. Someone will need to collect her personal items from her office." "I'll take care of it," I said. "Is there anything else?" A pause. "Mr. Ashford has also been suspended. The investigation covers both of them." "Perfect. Thank you for calling." I hung up and walked back to the panel box, where Jimmy was threading conduit through a wall bracket. "Bad news, boss?" he asked. "Depends on your perspective," I said, and got back to work. Nadia was sitting in her car in our driveway when I got home that evening, staring at her phone like it might provide answers. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. The confident architect who'd left for work that morning had been replaced by someone who'd just learned that actions have consequences. I parked beside her and walked over to tap on her window. "How did it go?" I asked when she rolled it down. Her eyes were red but dry. Nadia had never been a crier. "They fired me, Desmond, both Victor and me, effective immediately." "Why?" "Someone reported us for expense fraud. 18 months of hotel charges that couldn't be justified as business expenses. They had screenshots, documentation, everything." She was watching my face carefully, looking for some reaction that might tell her what I knew. I kept my expression neutral. Concerned husband, supportive partner, innocent bystander. "That's terrible," I said. "Who would do something like that?" "We don't know. The complaint was anonymous, but whoever it was had access to Victor's credit card statements, hotel confirmations, even my calendar entries. Sounds like someone with a grudge. Or someone who wanted to hurt us." She got out of the car, moving like every joint ached. "Victor thinks it might be someone from a competing firm. Industrial espionage." I nodded thoughtfully. "That makes sense. Did you call a lawyer?" "Victor did. But the evidence is solid, Desmond. We really were charging personal expenses to the company. The lawyer says we don't have much of a defense." We walked toward the house together, and for a moment it felt almost normal. Husband and wife, sharing the burden of a difficult day. Then I remembered the hotel receipts, and the feeling passed. "What about Eleanor?" I asked. "How's she handling this?" Nadia stopped walking. "How do you know Eleanor's involved?" "You said Victor got fired for expense fraud. His wife would have questions about hotel charges, wouldn't she?" She studied my face again, searching for something. "Eleanor filed for divorce this afternoon. She got the same anonymous package that HR received." Ouch. "Desmond." Her voice was careful now, testing. "You seem remarkably calm about all this." I unlocked the front door and held it open for her. "What do you want me to do? Scream? Throw things? We'll figure it out." "But I lost my job. We lost my income. Doesn't that worry you?" "We'll manage. Tate Electrical is doing fine." She followed me into the kitchen, where I started pulling ingredients for dinner. Routine activities, normal husband behavior. Nothing to suggest I'd orchestrated the destruction of her career. "Victor thinks someone's been watching us," she said. "Watching you how?" "Following us to meetings, taking pictures, building a case." I started chopping onions, letting my eyes water naturally. "Paranoid much? Is it paranoid if someone actually is out to get you?" "Good question." I considered my answer while dicing vegetables with the precision I brought to all my work. Maybe, I said finally, or maybe you two just got careless. The silence stretched between us like a live wire, dangerous and crackling with potential. She sat at the kitchen table, our table, where we'd shared thousands of meals and conversations and ordinary moments that apparently meant nothing to her. "Desmond," she said quietly, "is there something you want to ask me?" Here it was. The moment of truth, the confrontation scene, the dramatic revelation. I could lay out the evidence, demand explanations, force her to confess, make her grovel and apologize and beg for forgiveness. Instead, I kept chopping vegetables. Like what? Like whether I've been having an affair with Victor. I looked up from the cutting board, meeting her eyes with what I hoped was the right mixture of surprise and hurt. Have you? Would it matter if I said no? It would matter if you meant it. She was quiet for a long time, watching me prepare dinner like this was any other Thursday evening. Finally, she spoke. I meant it to end after the first time. It was just, he was there, and you were always working, and I felt invisible. So you made yourself visible to your boss. It wasn't like that. What was it like? Another long pause. It was stupid and selfish. And I'm sorry. I set down the knife and really looked at her. 23 years of marriage, 2 decades of shared history, and she was apologizing like she'd forgotten to pick up milk at the store. How long? I asked. 4 months, since June. June. Right after Daisy's graduation party, where Victor had complimented Nadia's dress and asked her to dance. I'd been manning the grill, making sure everyone had enough food, playing the good host while my wife flirted with another man 10 feet away. The hotels were his idea? She nodded. He said it was safer than his place or ours, more discreet, except for the corporate credit card. That was my idea. I thought it would look like legitimate business expenses. I almost laughed. The woman who'd graduated summa cum laude from architecture school, who could design buildings that would stand for centuries, had thought hotel receipts for affairs would pass as business expenses. Well, I said, someone noticed. Someone who wanted to destroy us. Or someone who wanted to protect Eleanor. Nadia's eyes sharpened. What do you mean? Think about it. Victor's wife gets the same evidence as HR. That's not about destroying careers. That's about exposing the affair. Someone wanted Eleanor to know what her husband was doing. She considered this, and I could see her trying to work backward from the evidence to the source. Smart woman, my wife, just not smart enough. Who would care that much about Eleanor? I shrugged and went back to cooking. Friend of the family? Someone who works at the company? Could be anyone with a conscience. Or someone with a grudge against Victor. Maybe. Does he have enemies? Every successful person has enemies. Spoken like someone who'd never run a small business, never had to earn loyalty and respect from people who could walk away any time. Victor Ashford had inherited his father's architectural firm, grown up with money and connections and the assumption that the world owed him whatever he wanted, including other men's wives. What happens now? I asked. I don't know. Look for another job, I guess. Try to rebuild. What about Victor? What about him? Are you going to keep seeing him? She was quiet for so long I thought she might not answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. There's nothing left to see him for. I nodded and kept cooking, processing this information like I'd process a wiring diagram. Victor had been using her and she'd been using him, and now that both their careers were ruined, the affair had lost its appeal. Convenient. Daisy will be home soon, I said. She doesn't need to know about this. Agreed. As far as she's concerned, you're between jobs, looking for new opportunities. What if she finds out? She won't, unless you tell her. Nadia looked relieved, probably thinking I was protecting her reputation. Actually, I was protecting my daughter from learning that her mother was the kind of person who would throw away a family for a few afternoons in cheap hotels. Daisy arrived home at 6:30, full of complaints about chemistry class and excitement about homecoming plans. She barely looked up from her phone long enough to acknowledge that we existed. "How was work, Mom?" "Fine," Nadia said. "How was school?" "Boring." "Can I go to Jessica's tonight? We're working on our history project." "Sure. Be home by 10. And that was it. 16-year-olds were so absorbed in their own lives that they missed everything happening around them. Sometimes that was a blessing. After Daisy left, Nadia and I sat in the living room watching television like nothing had changed. She curled up in her corner of the couch. I sat in my recliner, and we pretended this was just another quiet evening at home. But everything had changed. The balance of power, the foundation of trust, the assumption that we were on the same team. She'd lost her job, her lover, and her sense of security. I'd gained the satisfaction of watching justice play out exactly as I'd planned. "Desmond," she said during a commercial break. "Thank you." "For what?" "For not making this worse than it already is. For being understanding." I looked at her, really looked, and tried to remember when I'd stopped loving her and started calculating her destruction. The exact moment when disappointment had turned to anger, when anger had turned to something colder and more patient. I couldn't pinpoint it. Maybe it had been gradual, like water damage behind walls, invisible until the structure finally collapsed. "We're family," I said. "We'll get through this." She smiled for the first time all day, and I felt something twist in my chest. Not guilt. I was past that. Something more like satisfaction mixed with sadness. The way you might feel after tearing down a building that had good bones but couldn't be saved. "I love you," she said. "I love you too." The lie came so easily now that I almost believed it myself. Friday morning brought rain and a phone call from Eleanor Ashford. "Mr. Tate? This is Eleanor, Victor's wife. I was hoping we could talk." I was sitting in my truck outside the Riverside development, watching my crew run cable through a half-finished office building, the same project Nadia had supposedly worked late on while she was actually working late with Eleanor's husband. "Of course," I said. "What can I do for you?" "I received some disturbing information yesterday about Victor and your wife." She sounded composed, controlled. 20 years of marriage to a cheating husband had probably taught her to manage her emotions in public. "I heard about the work situation," I said carefully. "Nadia's pretty upset about losing her job." "I'm sure she is. Mr. Tate, I don't know if you're aware, but Victor and I are getting divorced." "I'm sorry to hear that." "Are you?" Her voice sharpened slightly. "Because someone made sure I found out about the affair, someone who had access to very detailed information about their hotel visits. I watched Carlos thread conduit through a wall bracket, his movements efficient and precise. Good work took patience and attention to detail." "What are you suggesting?" I asked. "I'm suggesting that whoever sent me those photographs and receipts wanted my marriage to end, and I'm wondering if that person might have been another betrayed spouse." Smart woman. Too bad she'd married an idiot. "Eleanor, I found out about the affair the same way you did. Anonymous package, no return address." "Really?" "Really. Nadia told me about the suspension yesterday. That's when I put the pieces together." A long pause. Rain drummed against my windshield, and I could hear similar sounds on her end of the line. "I want to believe you," she said finally. "Why wouldn't you?" "Because the person who sent that package knew things that only someone very close to the situation would know. Hotel preferences, credit card details, calendar information. That suggests either corporate espionage or personal revenge. Maybe it was both." "What do you mean?" I thought about my answer, choosing words carefully. Victor made enemies in business, right? Someone with a grudge might have been watching him, looking for leverage. The affair gave them what they needed. To destroy his career. And his marriage. 2 birds, 1 stone. She was quiet for a moment, processing this theory. It was plausible enough to provide reasonable doubt, which was all I needed. Mr. Tate, what are you going to do about your marriage? I don't know yet. We're still talking things through. Victor wants to see Nadia again. He called this morning asking if I knew where she was. Interesting. What did you tell him? I told him to go to hell, but I thought you should know he's not giving up. I appreciate that. We're both victims here, Mr. Tate. Whatever happens next, I hope we can support each other. After she hung up, I sat in my truck thinking about alliances and enemies. Eleanor Ashford was smart, connected, and newly motivated to make Victor's life difficult. She could be useful. My phone buzzed with a text from Nadia. Going to coffee with Lana, need to talk to someone. Lana Cross, Nadia's best friend since college. The woman who'd encouraged her to follow her heart and explore her options, and all the other euphemisms people used when they meant cheat on your husband. I texted back, say hi for me. Then I called Jimmy over to the truck. Change of plans, I said. I need you to handle the Riverside job. Something came up. Everything okay, boss? Just need to take care of some personal business. Lana Cross lived in a converted loft downtown, the kind of trendy space that looked great in magazines, but probably cost more to heat than most people made in a month. She worked as a freelance graphic designer, which meant she had flexible hours and plenty of time to involve herself in other people's drama. I parked across the street from her building and settled in to wait. Surveillance wasn't part of my usual skill set, but electrical work had taught me patience. Sometimes you had to wait for the right moment to make a connection. Nadia's car pulled up 20 minutes later. She looked around nervously before getting out, like she was worried someone might be watching. Smart instinct. Too late, but smart. They were inside for 2 hours. I spent the time making calls, catching up on paperwork, and thinking about next steps. When Nadia finally emerged, she looked worse than when she'd gone in. Red eyes, slumped shoulders, the posture of someone who'd been crying. Lana walked her to the car, and I could see them talking intensely through the windshield. Lots of gesturing, head shaking, what looked like an argument. Finally, Nadia drove away, leaving Lana standing on the sidewalk looking frustrated. I gave it 10 minutes, then walked across the street. Lana's building had a security door, but someone was coming out as I approached. I caught the door and headed for the elevator like I belonged there. Her loft was on the 4th floor. I knocked, and she opened the door with an expression that suggested she was expecting someone else. Desmond, what are you doing here? Looking for answers, I said. Can I come in? She hesitated, then stepped aside. The loft was exactly what I'd expected. Exposed brick, industrial fixtures, furniture that looked uncomfortable but probably cost more than my truck. Is this about Nadia? She asked. What do you think? She gestured toward a minimalist couch that felt like sitting on a wooden plank. She told me what happened. I'm sorry. Are you? Of course. Nobody wants to see their friends' marriages fall apart. I looked around the loft, taking in the details. Expensive artwork, high-end electronics, designer everything. Graphic design must have been paying well. Nice place, I said. Business must be good. I do okay. Nadia says you've been encouraging her to follow her heart lately. Lana's expression shifted slightly. I encouraged her to be honest about her feelings. Her feelings for Victor Ashford. Her feelings about her marriage. About whether she was happy. And you thought an affair would make her happier? I thought she deserved to explore her options. I nodded slowly. Options like hotel rooms paid for with someone else's credit card. That wasn't my idea. But you knew about it. She was quiet for a moment, probably trying to decide how much to admit. Nadia needed someone to talk to, she said finally. Someone who wouldn't judge her. Someone who would enable her. Someone who would support her. by helping her lie to her husband. Lana's composure cracked slightly. Look, I know you're hurt. I know this is hard. But Nadia was miserable, and you were too busy with work to notice. So it's my fault. It's nobody's fault. People grow apart. It happens. I stood up from the uncomfortable couch and walked to the window. The view overlooked downtown, all the way to the river where Nadia and I had been married 23 years ago. Lana, can I ask you something? Sure. How long have you been in love with Victor Ashford? The silence behind me was so complete I could hear the building's heating system cycling on. What? I turned around. Her face had gone pale, and her hands were clenched at her sides. It's a simple question. How long have you been in love with him? I'm not. That's ridiculous. Is it? You push my wife into an affair with her boss, encourage her to risk her career and her marriage? And for what? To see her happy? Or to watch her destroy herself so you could pick up the pieces? You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? You've been circling Victor for years, haven't you? Showing up at company parties, volunteering for projects, finding excuses to be around him. But he never noticed you. Too busy with his wife, his career, his reputation. She was backing away from me now, moving toward the kitchen island, like she needed something solid between us. Then Nadia gets promoted to his department, I continued. Beautiful, married, safe, the perfect affair partner for a man who doesn't want complications. And you saw your chance. You're crazy. Am I? You planted the idea in her head, didn't you? Told her she deserved better, that Victor understood her in ways I never could. Fed her just enough encouragement to push her over the line. Nadia made her own choices. Choices you influenced. Choices that would ultimately destroy her marriage and her career, leaving Victor free to find someone new. Someone like his wife's best friend, who'd been so supportive during the divorce. Lana's back hit the kitchen island. She looked trapped, cornered, exactly how I'd felt when I found those hotel receipts. That's not what happened, isn't it? Tell me, Lana, when Victor called this morning looking for Nadia, did he call you first? Her expression gave me the answer before she could speak. He did, didn't he? Asked if you knew where she was, maybe mentioned how grateful he was for your friendship during this difficult time. Desmond, please. Please what? Please pretend I don't see what's happening? Please ignore the fact that you manipulated my wife into destroying her life so you could have a shot at her lover? I walked closer, and she pressed back against the counter. Here's what's going to happen, I said quietly. You're going to stay away from Nadia. You're going to stay away from Victor, and you're going to stay out of my family's business. Or what? Or I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of friend you really are. I headed for the door, then stopped and looked back. Oh, and Lana, the next time you want to destroy someone's marriage, you might want to make sure their husband isn't smarter than you think he is. I left her standing in her expensive loft, surrounded by all the things money could buy, but apparently not the one thing she actually wanted. The rain had stopped by the time I got back to my truck. I sat there for a few minutes, processing what I'd learned. Lana Cross wasn't just an enabler, she was an orchestrator. The real architect of my wife's affair, building it piece by piece until it collapsed under its own weight, which meant she deserved to be buried in the rubble. My phone rang. Nadia. Where are you? She asked. Running errands. What's up? Victor called. He wants to meet tonight. What did you tell him? I told him I'd think about it. And? A long pause. I don't know, Desmond. Everything's so complicated right now. It doesn't have to be. What do you mean? I mean, you can choose to make it simple. Stay home tonight. Stay married. Start over. Is that what you want? I looked at Lana's building, thinking about manipulation and betrayal and the price of trusting the wrong people. I want my wife to come home, I said. It wasn't entirely a lie. Saturday morning brought unexpected visitors. I was in the garage, organizing tools and trying to decide what to do about the growing pile of evidence in my workbench drawer, when a black sedan pulled into my driveway. Two people got out, a woman in an expensive suit and a man with the kind of haircut that cost more than most people's car payments. Victor Ashford and someone I didn't recognize. I set down the wire cutters I'd been cleaning and walked to the garage door. "Victor," I said. "Interesting choice, showing up at my house." He looked like he'd aged 5 years in 2 days. Unshaven, rumpled clothes, the hollow-eyed appearance of a man whose carefully constructed life had just imploded. "Desmond, we need to talk." "Do we?" The woman stepped forward. "Mr. Tate, I'm Rebecca Martinez, Victor's attorney. We're hoping to resolve this situation without further complications." "What situation would that be?" Victor spoke up. "The anonymous complaint that destroyed both our careers." I leaned against the doorframe, projecting the casual confidence of a man with nothing to hide. "I thought that was about expense fraud." "It was about someone with a personal vendetta using corporate policy as a weapon," the lawyer said. "Someone who had access to private information and used it to maximum destructive effect. Sounds like you've given this a lot of thought." "We have. And we think you're the someone." I nodded slowly, like I was considering their theory. "Interesting. What makes you think that?" Victor stepped closer, and I could smell alcohol on his breath. Day drinking. Never a good sign. "Because you're the only person who had motive and opportunity," he said. "You found out about the affair, and you decided to make us pay." "How would I have found out?" "Nadia's computer, her phone, her calendar. You live in the same house. You had access to everything." "So does my daughter. Maybe she turned you in." "Your daughter didn't know about the affair." "How can you be sure?" Victor's composure cracked slightly. "Because Nadia was careful, discreet." "Discreet enough to use your corporate credit card for hotel rooms?" The lawyer put a hand on Victor's arm, probably sensing he was about to say something incriminating. "Mr. Tate," she said, "we're not here to assign blame for the affair. We're here because Victor's life has been systematically destroyed by someone who clearly planned this campaign very carefully." "Campaign?" "The timing of the complaint, the evidence provided, the simultaneous targeting of both his career and his marriage. This wasn't a spontaneous report from a concerned employee. This was calculated revenge. I had to admire her analysis. Completely accurate, professionally presented, utterly unprovable." "And you think I'm capable of that level of planning?" "We think you're smarter than you pretend to be," Victor said. "Small business owner, electrical contractor. People underestimate you, but you know how systems work. You know how to find weak points and exploit them." Flattering. It's not a compliment. I looked at both of them, standing in my driveway like they had some kind of authority here. Victor, the golden boy who'd inherited everything and assumed he could take whatever else he wanted. His lawyer probably billing him $300 an hour to make threats they couldn't back up. "Let me ask you something," I said. "What exactly do you want from me?" The lawyer answered. "We want you to retract the complaint. Admit it was filed in error based on misunderstood information. And if I refuse? Then we'll file harassment charges, stalking, whatever we can make stick." I almost laughed. "Based on what evidence?" "Based on the fact that you're the only person with motive to destroy Victor's life." "Actually, that's not true." They both looked confused. "Eleanor had motive," I continued. "So did any number of Victor's business competitors. Hell, even Nadia had motive if she wanted out of the affair but didn't know how to end it." "Nadia wouldn't what? Wouldn't betray you the same way she betrayed me?" Victor's face flushed red. "You don't understand the situation." "I understand it perfectly. You seduced my wife, used company resources to fund your affair, and got careless with the evidence. Now you're looking for someone to blame instead of taking responsibility for your choices." "This isn't over," he said. "Yes, it is." I walked back into the garage and started organizing tools again, ignoring them completely. After a few minutes, I heard car doors slam and the sedan pull away. But they'd given me an idea. I called Eleanor Ashford. "It's Desmond Tate," I said when she answered. "Victor just paid me a visit." "What did he want?" "To accuse me of filing the complaint that got him fired." A pause. "Did you?" "What do you think?" "I think you're smart enough to cover your tracks if you did." Fair assessment. "Eleanor, I need to ask you something. Has Victor ever mentioned Lana Cross?" "Nadia's friend? Once or twice? Why?" "I think she might be more involved in this situation than anyone realizes." I spent the next 20 minutes explaining my theory about Lana's motivations and her role in orchestrating the affair. Eleanor listened without interrupting, occasionally asking clarifying questions. "That's actually plausible," she said when I finished. "Victor always was susceptible to manipulation, especially from women who made him feel important. The question is, what do we do about it?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, Lana Cross destroyed both our marriages for her own selfish purposes. Don't you think she should face some consequences?" Another pause. "What kind of consequences?" "The kind that makes sure she can't hurt anyone else the same way." "Desmond, I'm not looking for revenge. I just want to move on with my life." "Sometimes moving on requires clearing the path first." She was quiet for a long moment. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting we make sure the right people know who really orchestrated this mess." "How?" "Leave that to me. But I might need your help with some details about Victor's behavior, his patterns, things that would help establish Lana's opportunity to manipulate him." I'll think about it." "Don't think too long. Victor's already trying to reconnect with Nadia. If Lana gets what she wants, she'll just do this again to someone else." After Eleanor hung up, I sat in my garage thinking about chess moves and long-term strategy. Victor and his lawyer had made a mistake by confronting me directly. They'd revealed their hand, shown me exactly how much they knew and how desperate they were. More importantly, they'd given me the perfect cover for what came next. My phone buzzed with a text from Nadia. "Having lunch with Lana. She has some ideas about job hunting." I texted back, "Good luck." Then I drove to Hartwell and Associates. The office building was mostly empty on Saturday, but security let me in when I explained I was there to collect my wife's personal items. They even gave me a visitor's badge and directions to her floor. Nadia's office was exactly what I'd expected. Clean, organized, professional. Architectural drawings covered one wall, and her desk held the usual collection of family photos and coffee mugs. A normal workspace for a normal person living a normal life, except for the locked drawer in her filing cabinet. I'd learned to pick locks in high school, a skill that had proved surprisingly useful in the electrical business. Sometimes you needed to access junction boxes or utility rooms, and waiting for someone with a key wasn't always practical. The lock was simple, probably original to the furniture. It took me less than 2 minutes to open it. Inside, I found exactly what I'd hoped for: a folder labeled Personal, containing printouts of emails between Nadia and Lana dating back 6 months. The progression was fascinating to read. Lana slowly, carefully planting seeds of discontent, encouraging Nadia to question her marriage, suggesting that she deserved more excitement in her life. The emails also revealed something else. Lana had been the one to suggest Victor as a solution to Nadia's marital boredom. She'd arranged their first private meeting, recommended the hotels, even helped Nadia come up with cover stories for the affairs. But the most interesting discovery was in the last few emails, sent just days before the anonymous complaint was filed. Lana expressing concern that the affair was getting too serious, that Nadia was in over her head, that maybe it was time to step back and reassess, almost like she'd known what was coming. I photographed every page, then carefully returned the folder to the drawer and locked it again. On my way out, I collected the personal items from Nadia's desk: photos, plants, the coffee mug Daisy had made in middle school art class, playing the role of supportive husband cleaning up his wife's professional disaster. The drive home gave me time to process what I'd learned. Lana Cross hadn't just enabled my wife's affair, she'd engineered it from beginning to end, pushed Nadia into Victor's arms, helped them maintain the deception, then somehow arranged for their exposure at exactly the right moment. The question was why. My phone rang as I pulled into the driveway. Unknown number. Desmond Tate. Mr. Tate, this is Detective Sarah Mendez with the city police. I was hoping we could talk. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. About what? About some property damage that occurred Thursday night. A vandalism incident involving Victor Ashford's vehicle. I'm not sure how I can help you with that. Well, Mr. Ashford seems to think you might know something about it. He filed a complaint this morning naming you as a suspect. I sat in my driveway, looking at my house, my home, my sanctuary, the place where I'd built a life that was now falling apart in carefully orchestrated stages. Detective, I was home Thursday night. My wife can confirm that. I'm sure she can, but I'd still like to meet in person just to clear things up. Would tomorrow morning work? Of course. Should I bring a lawyer? That's up to you, Mr. Tate. This is just a preliminary conversation. After she hung up, I sat in my truck, thinking about evidence and alibis and the difference between being guilty and being caught. Victor was escalating, trying to use the police to pressure me into admitting something I couldn't prove, but he'd made another mistake. By filing a complaint, he'd created an official record of his suspicions, and official records could be very useful things. I gathered Nadia's personal items and headed for the house, where I would play the supportive husband for a few more hours while I planned the next phase of my campaign. Because Victor was right about one thing. This wasn't over. It was just getting started. Sunday morning brought coffee, newspaper, and a knock on the door at exactly 9 o'clock. Detective Mendez was younger than I'd expected, probably early 30s, with the kind of direct gaze that suggested she'd heard every lie people could tell. Mr. Tate? Thanks for agreeing to meet. Of course. Can I offer you coffee? That would be great. I led her to the kitchen, where Nadia was reading the real estate section with unusual intensity, probably looking for apartments. Detective Mendez, this is my wife, Nadia. They shook hands politely. Nadia looked nervous, which was understandable given that her affair had just destroyed 2 careers and was now apparently generating police reports. Mrs. Tate, I understand you've been going through a difficult time lately. You could say that. I'm sorry to hear about the job situation. That must be stressful. Nadia glanced at me, probably wondering how much the detective knew about the circumstances of her firing. We're managing, she said. Detective Mendez accepted a cup of coffee and settled at our kitchen table like she belonged there. Professional but not threatening, friendly but not naive. Mr. Tate, Victor Ashford filed a complaint yesterday alleging that you vandalized his vehicle Thursday night. What kind of vandalism? Slashed tires, broken windshield, some creative use of spray paint, about $3,000 in damage. I shook my head sympathetically. That's terrible. Any idea who did it? Mr. Ashford seems to think you did. Based on what? Based on the fact that you recently discovered he was having an affair with your wife. Nadia's coffee cup clinked against the table. She was staring at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Detective, I said carefully, I only found out about the affair when Nadia told me about losing her job. That was Friday afternoon. So you're saying you had no knowledge of the relationship before then? None whatsoever. It was technically true. I'd had evidence, not knowledge. Evidence I'd discovered and acted upon, but knowledge I'd only gained when Nadia confessed. And where were you Thursday night? Here, home. Nadia can confirm that. Detective Mendez looked at my wife. Mrs. Tate? He was here, Nadia said quietly. We had dinner, watched television, went to bed around 11. Anyone else who can verify that? Our daughter was here until about 9:30. Then she went to a friend's house. The detective made notes in a small notebook, her pen scratching against paper in the quiet kitchen. Mr. Tate, do you own any spray paint? Probably. I'm an electrical contractor. Sometimes we need to mark utility locations. Would you mind if I took a look? Not at all. I led her to the garage, where she examined my collection of marking paint and made more notes. She was thorough, professional, going through the motions even though we both knew this was a fishing expedition. Everything seems to be accounted for, she said finally. Is there anything else I can help you with? Just one more question. Do you have any reason to believe someone else might have targeted Mr. Ashford's vehicle? Interesting question. Like who? Like someone else who was affected by his relationship with your wife. I thought about Eleanor, about Lana, about all the people whose lives had been disrupted by Victor's selfishness. Detective, I barely know Victor Ashford. I couldn't tell you who his enemies might be. What about his wife? Eleanor? I spoke with her once, briefly. She seemed more hurt than angry. And Mrs. Tate's friend, Lana Cross? Now that was very interesting. How had Detective Mendez learned about Lana? What about her? Mr. Ashford mentioned that she might have been involved in facilitating the affair, helping with arrangements, providing advice. Someone in that position might have access to information about his schedule, his habits. I glanced at Nadia, who was looking increasingly uncomfortable. You'd have to ask Lana about that, I said. I intend to. After the detective left, Nadia and I sat in the kitchen staring at each other across 23 years of marriage and 2 days of revealed secrets. Did you do it? She asked finally. Do what? Vandalize Victor's car. What do you think? I think you're capable of it. I think you're capable of a lot more than I gave you credit for. I sipped my coffee and considered my response. Maybe you never really knew me. Maybe I didn't. Maybe that's part of the problem. What problem is that? The problem of being married to someone who's smarter than he pretends to be. Someone who notices things, remembers things, plans things. Someone who doesn't like being lied to. Someone who might have known about the affair long before I told him. We looked at each other across the table, and I saw the exact moment when she stopped wondering and started knowing. How long have you known? She asked. Does it matter? It matters to me. I thought about the browser history, the hotel receipts, the careful documentation of her betrayal. About the anonymous packages and the destroyed careers and the satisfaction of watching justice play out exactly as planned. Since Wednesday night, I said, when I was fixing Daisy's laptop. She closed her eyes. And you've been planning this whole thing ever since. Planning what? The complaint to HR, the package to Eleanor, maybe even the vandalism, though I suppose you'll never admit that. Why would I plan any of that? Because you're not the kind of man who just accepts being cheated on. You're the kind of man who does something about it. She was right, of course, but admitting it would serve no purpose now. Nadia, what do you want me to say? That I'm sorry your affair had consequences? That I should have just pretended not to know? I want you to say whether our marriage means anything to you anymore. The question hung in the air between us like a live wire, dangerous and unpredictable. It meant something to me for 23 years, I said finally. Right up until I found out it didn't mean anything to you. That's not true. Isn't it? You threw away everything we built for a few afternoons with your boss. What am I supposed to think that means? She was crying now, quiet tears that she wiped away with the back of her hand. I made a mistake, Desmond. A terrible, selfish mistake. But that doesn't mean our marriage was meaningless. It means it wasn't meaningful enough. My phone buzzed with a text message. Unknown number. We need to talk. Important information about Lana Cross. Meet me at the diner on 5th Street in 1 hour. I showed the message to Nadia. Recognize the number? She shook her head. Who do you think it is? Only one way to find out. The diner on 5th Street was the kind of place that served coffee in thick ceramic mugs and pie that was always fresh. I found Eleanor Ashford sitting in a corner booth, looking like she hadn't slept in days. Thanks for coming, she said as I slid into the seat across from her. What's this about? It's about Lana Cross and Victor, and some things I found when I was going through his computer. She pulled out a tablet and opened a folder of screenshots. Victor kept copies of all his emails, she said, including some very interesting correspondence with your wife's friend. The emails were damning. Lana had been in contact with Victor for months before the affair started, ostensibly about design projects, but actually about much more personal matters. She'd flattered him, sympathized with his difficult marriage, suggested that he deserved someone who truly appreciated him. She was grooming him, Eleanor said, setting him up to be receptive when Nadia became available. Available? Look at the timeline. Lana starts contacting Victor in March. In April, she begins her campaign to convince Nadia that her marriage is stale. By May, she's arranging for them to work late together. The affair starts in June. I studied the emails, seeing the careful manipulation that had led to the destruction of 2 marriages. But here's the interesting part, Eleanor continued. Look at these messages from early October. The October emails showed Lana expressing concern about the affair, suggesting that Victor was getting too attached to Nadia, that the situation was becoming dangerous for everyone involved. She was preparing to end it, I said. More than that. Look at this one, dated October 9th. The email was brief. V. I think someone knows about you and N. Be careful. Might be time to step back. L. October 9th. The day after I'd found the browser history. The day before the anonymous complaint was filed. She knew, Eleanor said. Somehow she knew that the affair was about to be exposed. How could she know that? That's what I've been trying to figure out. And I think I have an answer. She opened another folder on the tablet. Victor's phone records. Look at the calls from October 8th. The records showed multiple calls between Victor and Lana that evening, starting around 10 p.m. and continuing past midnight. What if she didn't just know the affair was going to be exposed? Eleanor said. What if she was the one who exposed it? The pieces clicked into place like a perfect electrical connection. Lana orchestrates the affair, helps maintain it for months, then destroys it at exactly the right moment to maximize damage to everyone involved except herself. But why? Because she never wanted Victor to be happy with Nadia. She wanted him to be available for her. Then why destroy his career? Eleanor smiled grimly. Because a man with a ruined reputation and a messy divorce is a lot more dependent on the woman who stands by him through the crisis. I stared at the evidence, seeing the elegant manipulation that had played all of us like pieces on a chessboard. Lana Cross hadn't just enabled the affair, she'd created it, managed it, and terminated it according to her own timeline and objectives. What do you want to do about this? I asked. I want to make sure Victor knows exactly who's been pulling his strings, and I want to make sure Lana Cross faces some consequences for what she's done. What kind of consequences? Eleanor's smile turned predatory. The kind that makes sure she never manipulates anyone else the same way. I looked at the evidence spread across the table, emails, phone records, timeline analysis. Everything we needed to expose Lana's role in orchestrating the destruction of 2 families. When do we start? I asked. How about right now? Monday morning brought rain and revelation. I was sitting in my truck outside Lana's building, watching water cascade down the windshield when Eleanor called. He bought it, she said without preamble. All of it? Every word. Victor's convinced that Lana manipulated him into the affair, then sabotaged it when things got too serious. He's furious. Furious enough to confront her? Furious enough to destroy her if we play this right. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Eleanor would feed Victor just enough information to make him believe Lana had betrayed him, while I would ensure that Nadia learned the truth about her best friend's manipulation. Two angry victims, pointed at the same target, with enough evidence to bury Lana Cross under the weight of her own schemes. "What's your timeline?" I asked. "Victor's meeting with Lana this afternoon. He thinks he's going there to ask for her help getting Nadia back. Instead, he's going to confront her about the emails. And Nadia? That's up to you. But I'd suggest sooner rather than later. Once this gets started, it's going to move fast." After Eleanor hung up, I sat in my truck thinking about justice and revenge and the difference between the two. Justice was what happened when the system worked correctly. Revenge was what happened when it didn't. This felt like both. I drove home to find Nadia in the kitchen, staring at her laptop screen with the intensity of someone trying to solve an impossible puzzle. "Job hunting?" I asked. "Trying to. It's harder than I expected." "How so?" "Word gets around in this industry. Everyone knows about the Hartwell situation. No one wants to hire someone who got fired for expense fraud." I poured coffee and sat across from her. "What about references?" "Victor's not exactly in a position to recommend me, and everyone else at Hartwell is probably afraid to get involved." "What about Lana? Couldn't she help with networking?" Nadia's expression darkened. "Lana's been distant lately, ever since the story broke." "Distant how?" "Evasive, like she's avoiding me. Yesterday she canceled our lunch plans at the last minute, said she had a family emergency." "Maybe she's just trying to stay out of the drama." "Maybe, or maybe she's worried about being associated with the scandal." I nodded sympathetically, then pulled out my phone and opened the folder of screenshots I'd taken from her office. "Nadia, there's something I need to show you." Her face went pale as she scrolled through the evidence. The emails between her and Lana, documenting months of careful manipulation. The progression from innocent friendship to active encouragement of adultery. "Where did you get these?" she whispered. "From your office. I went there Saturday to collect your personal items." "You went through my files?" "I went through your locked drawer, yes." She stared at the screen, reading her own words back to herself. The gradual shift from contentment to discontent, guided by Lana's subtle suggestions and carefully planted doubts. "She planned this," Nadia said finally. "It looks that way." She pushed me toward Victor, helped me justify the affair, even suggested the hotels we used. And then she warned Victor that someone was suspicious, right before the complaint was filed. Nadia looked up from the phone. "You think she's the one who reported us?" "I think she orchestrated the whole thing from beginning to end. The question is why. Because she wanted Victor for herself. That's my theory." Nadia set the phone down and put her head in her hands. My best friend. 20 years of friendship, and she was manipulating me the whole time. Maybe not the whole time, but definitely these past few months. How could I have been so stupid? You trusted someone you shouldn't have trusted. It happens to everyone. She looked at me with something that might have been gratitude. "Even to you?" "Especially to me." We sat in silence for a few minutes, processing the implications of what we'd learned. Then Nadia spoke again. "What are we going to do about this?" "What do you want to do?" "I want to confront her. I want to make her admit what she did." "That might not be necessary." "What do you mean?" I told her about Eleanor's plan, about Victor's impending confrontation with Lana, about the web of evidence that was about to collapse around our mutual enemy. "So we just wait?" Nadia asked. "We wait and we watch and we let them destroy each other." That seems almost cruel. Crueler than what she did to us? Nadia considered this. "No, I suppose not." My phone buzzed with a text from Eleanor. "It's starting. Victor just left for Lana's place. Wish us luck." I showed the message to Nadia. "How long do you think it will take?" she asked. "Not long. Victor's not exactly known for his subtlety." We didn't have to wait long. At 2:47 p.m., my phone rang. "Eleanor." "It's done," she said. Victor confronted Lana with the evidence. She tried to deny it at first, then broke down and admitted everything. Everything? The manipulation, the planning, even filing the anonymous complaint. She said she did it because she loved Victor and wanted to save him from making a mistake with Nadia. How did Victor take that? About as well as you'd expect. He's threatening to sue her for fraud, defamation, intentional interference with business relationships. His lawyer's probably drafting papers right now. And Lana? Lana's finished. Victor's already called 3 of her biggest clients to let them know about her unethical behavior. By tomorrow, she'll be toxic in this town. I looked at Nadia, who was listening to my side of the conversation with fascination. "Eleanor, what about the vandalism complaint? Is Victor still pursuing that?" "He withdrew it this morning. Turns out he's decided Lana was probably responsible for that too." Convenient. "Anything else?" "Just one thing. Victor wants to talk to Nadia." "About what?" "About starting over. He thinks now that they both know the truth about Lana's manipulation, they can have a real relationship." I handed the phone to Nadia. "It's for you." She listened for a few minutes, her expression shifting from surprise to disgust to something approaching anger. "No," she said finally. "Absolutely not. Victor, what we had was never real. It was manufactured by someone else for her own purposes. I'm not interested in finding out what's left when the manipulation stops." She hung up and handed me back the phone. "That felt good," she said. "I bet it did." "Desmond, can I ask you something?" "Sure. When you found those hotel receipts, when you realized what was happening, why didn't you just confront me directly?" I thought about the question, about the moment when I'd discovered her betrayal and decided to respond with calculated precision instead of emotional chaos. "Because I wanted to understand the whole situation before I acted," I said finally. "I wanted to know who was involved, how deep it went, what the real motivations were. And now you know. Now I know. So what happens next?" "That depends on what you want to happen next." She was quiet for a long time, staring out the kitchen window at the rain that had been falling all day. "I want to start over," she said finally. "Not with Victor, not with anyone else. With you. If you'll let me. After everything that's happened. Because of everything that's happened. Because I finally understand what I almost threw away." I looked at my wife, really looked at her, for the first time in months. The woman I'd married 23 years ago, the mother of my daughter, the person I'd built a life with before it all got complicated by manipulation and betrayal and the kind of lies that destroy families. "It won't be easy," I said. "I know. There's going to be a lot of work, a lot of rebuilding. I know that too. And I'm never going to forget what happened. I wouldn't want you to. I don't want to forget either. I want to remember what it cost us, so we never risk it again." I reached across the table and took her hand. It felt familiar and foreign at the same time, like coming home to a house that had been remodeled while you were away. "Okay," I said. "Let's try." "Really?" "Really." She squeezed my hand, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like we might actually make it through this. My phone buzzed with one final text, this one from Lana. "I know what you did. This isn't over." I showed the message to Nadia, who read it and shook her head. "Even now she's trying to manipulate the situation. What do you want to do about it?" "Nothing. She's already lost everything that matters to her. Victor's gone, her business is ruined, her reputation is destroyed. What more could we do to her? We could expose her publicly, make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of person she really is. Or we could just move on with our lives and let her live with the consequences of her choices. I thought about it. Revenge versus justice, action versus acceptance, the satisfaction of complete victory versus the peace of letting go. You're probably right, I said. I'm definitely right. We've all hurt each other enough. She was right, of course. But as I deleted Lana's text message, I couldn't help thinking that some people never really face consequences for their actions. Some people just move to new towns, find new victims, and start the whole cycle over again. But that wasn't my problem anymore. I had a marriage to rebuild, a family to repair, and a life to get back on track. The rest of the world would have to take care of itself. Outside, the rain was finally stopping, and the first hints of sunlight were breaking through the clouds. It felt like a good sign. It felt like a new beginning.